Welcome to Gillette Stadium for this 2018 AFC Divisional Playoff. White to the pylon, touchdown! Brady throws, finding Chris Hogan in the end zone.
You're waking up the menaces here.
Brady lobs it for Gronk. He reaches up, touchdown, Patriots!
You cannot stop Tom Brady.
It just feels like playoff football. This place is ready to rock. Blunt going outside. He's in, touchdown! Eagles lead. How about that? Ryan throwing it up in the air. Incomplete! They are one win away from the Super Bowl.
Set the scene for this AFC Championship game to see who goes to Super Bowl 52.
Tom throws down the road, catch by Amendola to the end zone. Touchdown!
We got life.
Brady fires, caught in the back of the end zone by Danny.
It's a catch.
Amendola!
We're heading to Super Bowl 52. Start packing, boys.
The atmosphere is hard here at Lincoln Financial Field.
Gives you chills.
Keenum. It's intercepted. The 10 to 5. Touchdown! Alone is Jeffrey. The Eagles are headed for the Super Bowl.
We're joined now by a man that coached against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick in a Super Bowl, former Rams head coach, Mike Martz. Welcome to Undisputed.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
You launched the dynasty. You realize that.
So who wins on Sunday?
Well, I think originally, before they said Gronk was coming back, I'd have said the Eagles. I think this is probably the worst in talent that the Patriots have ever gone into Super Bowl. Their roster is probably
Agreed.
the least talented of all the Super Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, the defense with the Eagles is really strong and dynamic. I think Foles, obviously, the 122 rating, has played really well in the playoffs, handles pressure. So I really felt good that the Eagles would probably win this thing, but maybe by 3, 7 points or whatever. With Gronk, I think it changes completely. They're a totally different team when he's in the picture. They can't, you have to commit 2 people to him in the passing game. You watch DBs trying to cover him and linebackers draped all over him, and they're great athletes and they're faster. They can do all those things, but they cannot go up and get the ball away from him. I think you have to play him over the top and come down on him in the passing game and commit somebody to him underneath as well. That means you're committing 2 guys, and obviously that position is a strong safety position, which means now that the Patriots will run the ball very effectively because their run force has been inhibited because of the Gronk factor, so to speak. But they're a completely different team when he's healthy.
Go ahead, Skip. I ain't got nothing to say because I've been trying to tell you that for like the last 2
So,
minutes.
Coach, what does it say to you that they managed to win the Super Bowl last year without Rob Gronkowski for the last 8 games?
Yeah, I think if they played the same team every Super Bowl, I think that'd be good. But they're not. They're playing an Eagles team on defense that's pretty dynamic. They're pretty darn good.
Okay, and what does it say to you that they lost Gronk late in the first half of the AFC Championship game and Brady was much better the second half than he was the first half?
Well, I think that's all good, but again, you're talking about a different team.
Yeah.
They're not playing the Eagles. The Eagles are different, and I think they're so strong on defense. I like the matchup and how they morph in and out of things. I think that it's just a total, when you have a different team, you can't compare. You can't say, oh, we played Team A, and because we did this, we didn't have him, and then you got Team B. They're 2 different teams completely. And they create different problems. Now, that being said, nobody's better than the Patriots than covering for a weakness or taking advantage of your strength or weaknesses. Yep. And the first thing that Belichick will do is whatever you do well, he's going to eliminate that. He's going to try and take that away from you. But the Achilles heel for them right now, to me, is their defense. Early they weren't very good at all, and they've done a great job of coaching them and getting them at a certain level. But offensively, they've covered for that to some extent too. So I think they're in a bit of a jam in that respect defensively. But when Gronk comes back now, I think they play from a lead in this game.
When I look at the Patriots and we talk about their defense, they don't give up points. You might get a lot of yards. You might run the football for over 100. Your quarterback might throw for 300. But what they do, they force you to settle for field goals. They keep you out of the end zone. So, therefore, they keep themselves close enough that they can remain in contact. So when they get in their run, because, in the Super Bowl, Mike, you're going to go on 2 momentum. They're going to be momentum swings.
Right.
How much distance or separation have you put between yourself and the team that you play?
I think you have to be careful of that, too, because I think teams that play the Patriots play keep away. And so they grind the clock and try to get first down. So you're not going to score points like that.
Right.
They don't want Brady and that group on the field.
Right.
And that happened to us. So we would win games against teams that normally score a lot of points, wouldn't score a lot of points because they tried to play keep away.
Right.
And it doesn't work.
Right.
So I hope you're right about playing from a lead with Gronkowski. I agree with you on the Philly part of this equation. I picked New England before the season started, and the harder I look at this on paper, just on paper, the more I fear Philly. This is a better overall football team than New England has.
Oh, I agree.
All facets.
I agree
all
with
facets, except for quarterback, and you could argue head coach. But what concerns me about Brady with Gronk is he does tend, to me, to get a little Gronk-centric, and he will force balls to Gronk that he doesn't force to anyone else, in part because of what you say. There are two defenders and there are no defenders. You just throw it up high and wide, and he goes up and snatches it, and you just can't control the beast. But sometimes they're more dangerous to me, as they were in the second half against Jacksonville, when he spreads it. Because when he starts spreading it and starts flipping it to the two backs coming out of the backfield, it gets crazy hard to defend all their little parts. None of them Gronk parts, but just it becomes more spread out and harder to defend. Where two guys are going to be on Gronk every play. Is that, I mean?
No, there's no question. And I think they do that when they're playing from a lead or the game is within 3 points or so. When you see him get a little nuts with the ball with Gronk is when they're playing catch-up. And that's when he really shines and makes these great throws and great plays. But also, that's when, that blemish comes up where he'll make a throw. Tom, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I
and
agree.
he's trying to make it happen with Gronk, and you can understand that to some extent. But that's why I say if this game's in the balance within 3 points going into they'll take it over. They'll take that game over early in the fourth quarter.
Well,
I think, though,
if they do take it over, it's going to be the first time they took a Super Bowl over in their run, because they don't take any Super Bowl over.
Well, it's interesting, too, that you said that because, when we played them the first time, they didn't have 100 yards going into the fourth quarter. They were anemic. They couldn't do anything. Well, and then, we turned the ball over, and they got points off that, obviously. But when they had to do it at the end, they got it done.
Well, I think the thing is, you say, Skip, you say he forces the ball to Gronk. Gronk is 6'7", 280.
I know.
You're not forcing the ball to a 5'8", 190-pound receiver.
Heck no.
Gronk has such a large catch radius.
On the concussion play, that's a forced throw because it's in double coverage and you're setting him up to get bashed, which he did.
When you have a guy running man-to-man with him, you're going to throw him the ball.
Right.
I don't care who it is. You're going to throw him the ball.
Absolutely.
He could be climbing. It doesn't make any difference. When they have that guy on top coming down to safety, that's when you have to be careful because that's when the ball gets deflected, picked, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's how you got to play him.
Yes.
You have to have somebody over the top all the time coming down on top of him. And if the other guys are going to beat you, they're going to beat you.
Right.
So do you think that having Gronk will open up a run game that was not it completely disappeared against Jacksonville? They had 28 yards rushing until the final real play of the game when Deion Lewis got loose wide to kill the clock with an 18-yard run. So they had 46 rush yards and managed to overcome a 10-point deficit and beat Jacksonville.
If they get Gronk involved early in this game, in the passing game, if he catches a few balls in that first quarter and makes a difference on some big plays, then all of a sudden you'll see that running game come charging through. Because what happens, again, is those guys responsible in coverage, as you know, they're also the primary run force, support guys.
Support guys.
So now you're a guy and a half less up at the line of scrimmage. They're worried about his releases, et cetera. And the coverages now are different. They're not run support type fronts and coverages. Now you're playing coverage instead of run support and how you call the defense. And that's where they start making some money in the running game.
Okay. Now, to the other quarterback, Nick Foles. If you look at his 3 playoff games, extraordinary, high-level play, 75% completion. 5 touchdowns, no interceptions in the playoffs, 3 playoff games. Torched the #1 defense in the Minnesota Vikings, albeit in Philadelphia. How do you expect him to respond to this pressure on this stage? Can he keep this sort of flow up?
Oh, I don't think there's any question. He just has to be good for one more game.
Right.
He doesn't have to have a career off of this. He's just got to be really good in this game. And he's got a 122 rating in the playoffs. There's no reason to think that he won't continue that, and they are going to change how they're doing things with him, and that's the big issue. Philly cannot get in there and all of a sudden start drawing back their horns a little bit and play not to lose this thing, And so many teams do that. They've got to put the pedal to the metal and just go. You can't play keep away from Tom Brady because eventually he's going to get the ball back and beat you. You've got to just go, buddy. You just got to go, and then if you're ahead in the last 2 minutes, hopefully you can take a knee and ground the clock because if you give him 30 seconds left, he's still going to get it done.
Pull something off. But Nick Foles against a defense that you have big questions about, as do I. again, it started coming together after 4 calamity games to start the year. And in what is it? Points scored, they're 5th, in points allowed. So, do you think that they could do? They scored 38 on Minnesota. Could they put up 30 on this defense?
Sure, they can. Yeah. But here's the issue, though. Every Super Bowl that I've watched them play, including ours, when they went into that Super Bowl, they were totally different on defense than they were the rest of the year. So there's going to,
scheme-wise?
Yes, they're going to have some different coverage, some different tweaks to it that Philadelphia is not prepared to see. They haven't practiced against. And so it really comes down to not Foles, but how well as a staff they organize and come back and attack that and change and can counter that. If you can't counter that, if you're just going to keep going with that game plan, you're going to lose that game.
That's interesting.
So that's why you come into a game like this, all games really, but particularly this game, with all your weapons. You have to have stuff. They were never a cover 2-man team.
Right.
They opened up the Super Bowl, and that's all they played, 2-man. So, they're going to do those kinds of things. They're not going to they're not going to put a target and say, okay, here we are. Right. They're going to be all over the place. You have to understand that going in, and you have to stay ahead of them if you can.
Right. And they'll stay, because a lot of times, Mike, you watch so much tape, and teams in the regular season, they're going to be who they are. Now, they will give you 1 or 2 defenses that you haven't seen, and you say, look, Kurt, they're going to give us something we haven't seen. But if they hit you in the back, just hold on to the ball. Just get us back to Marshall, get us back to the line of scrimmage, 2nd and 10, don't make it 2nd and 15. But Coach Belichick probably is going to come in this game, and he'll play 35 to 40 snaps of a front that you haven't practiced or you don't expect them to see.
That's exactly right.
I expect them to play a lot of 22-man because they don't expect Nick Foles to go anywhere, and that's why they played you 22-man. That's a coverage you would never play against Aaron Rodgers. You would never play 22-man against Cam Newton, because if he gets through the line, he's running behind you while your defense has got their back to him.
Right.
So I expect them to play a lot of whatever you think what you thought they were. They'll play different because I don't expect Nick Foles to run. So I expect to see a lot of 2.
I think you're right. And here's the other element. A Patriot team just doesn't make mistakes, especially in big games.
Yes.
They don't turn it over. They don't jump off sides. They don't do dumb things.
They don't.
They're not nervous. They're not edgy. They don't do stupid things. And that's a factor you have to take into consideration.
Yes.
The other thing is Belichick pays attention to things that other head coaches like myself never even thought of. Before our Super Bowl, he told his DBs, he says, look, this is a Super Bowl. They're not going to call a lot of penalties. So we're going to play 2-man. You grab onto those receivers and do what you got to do. And if they start calling a lot of penalties, then we'll back off it. Well, they never called the penalties. And I'm not complaining about it. I thought it was brilliant in what he did, but I never thought about that.
Right.
I would never think about something like that. And that's why he's Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
So, last point that scares me the most of all. When Tom Brady has lost big postseason games, it's simply been because somebody could blow up his pocket and move him off his spot. And then some other bodies could come wide and blast him and knock him around a little bit and get him a little out of sync and out of sorts. This defense with this wide 9 that Jim Schwartz plays has the firepower and the capability of Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. And a host of others. Chris Long coming off.
They got Long.
Yeah, they have studs, man, across the front. They have the horses to move his spot.
They do, and the angle that they're coming off, the Patriots haven't seen this before. It's going to be new for them. We saw it. We used to play them a lot, and it's a nightmare to prepare for in the protections. It's really hard, and you've got to get other people up there to chip or help, and otherwise the tackles just aren't used to seeing this. Yeah. And it's a very difficult defense to protect. And I think this is exactly an advantage that we were talking about earlier for the Eagles. That's why I felt originally the Eagles are probably going to win this thing.
Right.
But I think Gronk is just an overbearing thing.
They're getting that wide 9 and they angle themselves in. So they're already forcing you to kick. And a lot of times they'll wipe you away. If you watch Chris Long on that strip sack, the guy was there, but he just wiped his arm and he got skinny and got around him. Now you can run against the wide 9. But the thing that the Eagles have done well is that they've gotten ahead and they get you out of the running scheme. So they make you throw it when they want you to throw it. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup. But Coach Belichick, I don't know if you saw that 30 for 30 Skip and I talked about it. But like you said, he will come out there. They're a 3-4 defense and they play the Bears in the divisional round and they go 4 down linemen and 2 linebackers. You're like, hell, they're a 3-4 team. Why they got 6 men on the line of scrimmage?
Well, that's a shocking change to make.
How about this, though? We're playing them in 0-1. They're 5-4, Nobody's talking about them winning anything. In fact, they're complaining about them. We go up there in Foxborough on Sunday night, and we ended up beating them up there.
Right.
And I said after the game, I thought, we just beat a Super Bowl team. Everybody laughed about it. Well, we ended up seeing them in the Super Bowl. But the point is, we came out in double tights and one wide receiver and two backs. He came out with 4 down and all DBs. We don't have block. Who's this guy? Who's 23? Who's 21? Who's this? I mean, we end up adjusting to it, but that's what he's going to do. He's going to, from the very first play, he's going to say, "Oh, what's going on out there? Say, get that picture over here. Take a look at what's going on." He's going to shake it up pretty good.
Bill Belichick, that scoundrel.
That's
Mike will be back later in the show. One of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, Patrick Peterson, joins us next.